Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Land Fan Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Clay Hepler. Clay Hepler is a seven-figure land investor with over 100 transactions completed. His company buys, sells, and develops rural recreational land across the U.S. Through land investing, he was able to build the plane on the way down, as he and his wife were plummeting toward what seemed like inevitable bankruptcy. He managed to cover their expenses and more, ultimately setting his family up for financial stability. He realized that financial security and ultimately financial freedom is achievable through land investing. Clay, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
It's good. It's always that intro always cracks me up, in the most sick way, right?
Yeah.
The beginning, as many probably listeners know, the beginning of any venture is particularly difficult, right? And sometimes you got to build that plane on the way down.
That's it. That's it. I love that analogy because I think no matter what phase you are in your business, where you are financially in your life, creating a land business is very often like building a plane in mid-flight. And yours just so happened to be on the way down, which is even more impressive. So let's jump right in. Can you tell us how did you get started in doing land deals?
So my background is in real estate, right? Um, a long time ago, my first professional soiree was I wanted to be in the State Department. I wanted to work for the State Department. I was working for the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I was like, hey, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like CIA or working for the State Department. Ended up just not working out. It just didn't really jive with me. I really wanted a meritocratic job, right? You put a little something in, you get a lot out, but it was more hierarchical and it just didn't resonate with me. And so I dropped out of college, joined a chocolate company, learned about the world of sales and marketing, and then eventually got into real estate, got into working with a mom and pop real estate investor in my city. A couple hundred units, got a lot of responsibility, a lot of autonomy, like very early on. And I helped him build a wholesaling and house flipping business. So he was essentially like the financial partner, right? And I was the boots on the ground guy, gunning, running. We did 75 flips and wholesales in our first year, and it was nuts. And we got really successful. And so along the way, I was like, hey, I want a little piece of the action. And so I convincingly, Lee, if my wife's listening to this, I remember when I pitched her the idea of living in a house hack. So I lived in a 3-unit apartment building and, did the whole house hack thing, FHA 203K loan. It had a contractor steal $10,000 from us on our first draw. And if anyone knows about the 203K loan, is they're very like restrictive. So you have a consultant that goes out to your house. Like imagine like if you're doing a hard money loan, right? And we had some guy get a $10,000 draw and we didn't have that much money. And so we had to move back in with my parents for 9 months. And we drove in, man, like every single day I did to find new contractors because that was a GC. And so that's how we cut our teeth in real estate investing. We were doing the painting with the buying heaters from Home Depot and painting our hallway and our room because we couldn't afford to have an HVAC guy in there until we had enough salary. It was crazy. But, for some reason, we were like, we're going to do it again. And so we bought another building right down the street, a 3-unit, and did the BRRRR strategy right. Then we bought a 6-unit, then a single family. Then we started acquiring more units, 6-unit here, another 3-unit, and, build a portfolio. Bought about 65, 70 units in that next year. And this is getting to how I got into land. We're in a city that has very old buildings, right? It's the story that is told by bigger pockets, which I drank the Kool-Aid and I wasn't really mature enough, but it's like, hey, like you get $100, $200 a door, right? That's the metrics that you use when you're underwriting. Okay. My wife and I were like, okay, like we had to have the expenses and I was underwriting this and I'm not an operations guy, right? Kendall, I'm a sales and marketing guy. And so I can get the deals through, but when they come through, it's like, are we really checking in on the tenants? Are the tenants still here? Is the water turned on? Is the electricity turned on? And we acquired all these units in these older buildings. They're built in 1900, right? So you got box gutters, right? You have sandstone foundations that are like porous. So water comes in and the whole basement gets moist and there's mold everywhere and it rains. It's like a freaking rainforest. And my wife had a good job at this whole point. So I'm doing this. I'm no longer with this company, right? I'm doing this on the side. I'm wholesaling stuff. We were wholesaling some multifamilies. I wholesaled a 28 unit. I was wholesaling other bigger properties, pretty big checks, but not enough to cover we have the sewer line. It's a terracotta sewer line. It's $35,000 that we have to pay for right out of our pocket. And we're not cash flowing because we have a vacancy rate of 10% in our portfolio, but we're inheriting all these tenants and we're having to cover this debt service. When your debt service is $65,000, $75,000 a month, you can see how stuff gets gone quickly. And to put this all even worse, my wife and I also went out and we bought an Airbnb in a 5,500 square foot house in the Rocky Mountains. And at that point, I was like very confident in myself. And I was like, I can do all these birds. I'm wholesaling these big buildings. I can do this shit. And this happened in a really short timeline. So you're not like aware. You don't know that you're being lucky. It's lucky, right? I was lucky, right? And so we bought this property. We're like, we can Airbnb this property right in a seasonal town. But it's a 5,500 massive house, right? In the Rocky Mountains, it gets really cold in the winter, high utility costs. I got my high utility costs in my apartment buildings in Pittsburgh. And then my wife gets a call before Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, a couple of years ago. And her salary, which was a cushy salary, it leaves. The company goes under. She was working for a developer, sort of developer, aspirational developer, ex-tech guy that got a bunch of money, tried to put in a real estate, family's a developer, but he just didn't have the money. And so it went like that. And she was owed a month of salary, right? So I'm sitting there, man, and I have the background of wholesaling and house flipping. I'm sitting there and our wedding's the next year. We're paying for it because our families, my family, unfortunately, didn't have a lot of money. My wife's family couldn't take care of it. And so we had to float this Airbnb. We had to figure out a way to float these 65 units that sometimes are cash flowing, sometimes they're not. They're half rented and rehabbed. And it was like, man, I got to make money quickly. And so I would say if I look back at it and knowing what I know now, I would say I just I bought 2 courses, bought two land investing courses. And I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do it. And that's the story of how I got into land investing.
Imagine having a complete toolkit for success right at your fingertips. That's exactly what you get with Only Land Fan School, our premium online community. For a low monthly fee, access our treasure trove of resources, the on-market deals course, acquisitions tool suite, and Dispo Secrets library. Plus, connect with fellow flippers in our active community. Whether you're hunting for deals or closing sales, Only Land Fan School has you covered with step-by-step guidance and insider knowledge. Ready to supercharge your land flipping journey? Join Only Land Fan School at olfschool.com today. Man, okay, so what a wild ride from wholesaling to doing the 203K method, the BRRRR method, Airbnb. You were up to your eyeballs in real estate. What was that mindset? What was that thought process to say, you know what, let me add another real estate arm, which is land? What led you there?
Yeah, so I think that the story that was sold to me, and I believed it was, there's an opportunity to make quick cash, right? And I was at that point still, my wife and I were considering moving out to the Airbnb that we had out there. We were like, we want to live out, do the Yellowstone life, the John Dutton on the cool Western stuff.
Yeah, man, yeah.
And we realized wasn't really the move, but we needed to make the money quickly. And so it was like, do I go back? Do I wholesale virtually? At that point, I was like, I don't know if I could do wholesale virtually or flip houses virtually. And so I was like, I have a lot of complementary skill sets for this business. And so I just took a leap. That was the mindset around getting in. And also, Kendall, was like, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to cash flow my way out of it. I needed the hits. I needed the cash hits.
Hey land fans, looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the Only Land Fans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game-changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group. This is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at onlylandfansgroup.com and join the conversation today. That's onlylandfansgroup.com. See you there. Yeah. And so talk to us about your very first land deal. What did that look like? How did it come about?
Yeah, I did the old way of I sent out a bunch of mailers and I targeted a bunch of Florida infill lots, right? So I was doing like subdivision infill lot targeting, and I got an infill lot in Santa Rosa County, and I had a couple of potential opportunities. A lot of the funders like weren't about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get a HELOC, and I'm gonna buy this property with a HELOC on my 3-unit, and we're gonna see how it goes. And so I got the HELOC, and I bought it with my HELOC. Man, the numbers now. It's like I think I bought it for. I originally had it on a contract for 26, then I renegotiated it till 18 when we were on a contract, and then I think I sold it for 39. Like solid deal.
Yeah.
Pretty decent deal for your first deal. But the fact is I sent out 15,000 mailers to get that first deal, and made a lot of mistakes. But
a lot of lessons, I'm sure.
Here we go.
All right. So you got this very first deal. What does your bread and butter business model look like now? What are you currently focusing on in terms of the types of land deals you're doing? Are you still traditionally buying and then just flipping? Are you doing some creative financing? Are you doing some double closes? Walk us through what that looks like now for your business.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have the philosophy of we'll take what we get, what comes into our net. And so we'll depending on the state, we will wholesale, we will close and flip, and we'll subdivide. It really is about what the market gives us. We'll transition to a shop, every land investor's aspiration, right? High dollar, low volume shop eventually. And we're transitioning into that business. I think probably Q3 next year, Q2, Q3 will be more in that. We have some opportunities for entitlement that are in our pipeline right now that we're looking at and going through the initial process of executing on. But it's really at this point casting the net pretty wide and taking what we can get because we can execute on the back end. And yeah.
Excellent. And so are you seeing that there's any particular type of land deal that you guys are doing more of in this current market? I know every state's a little bit different, but are you finding yourself doing more infill, more subdivides? What does that look like right now for your particular business?
What I'm seeing as a general rule is that the 5 for 20, sell for 40 are going away. I'm seeing that the markets get more efficient over time. And so I see that those deals are going away, right? Because those sellers have been pretty cherry picked over, right? And so the model is just maturing a little bit, and it's becoming. I remember when I got into wholesaling, you'd hear all these guys that have been in it for 15 years say, "I remember when I bought a house in that neighborhood for $50,000," right? That was a narrative. And what we're seeing more and more of is the higher dollar properties with higher relative profits, but compressed purchase to values. And I think that will be the trajectory of the land business at large. And so we're in the rural recreational market, and our entry prices are normally around the 80 range. We're usually entering between 80 and 150. We purchased a property last week for 550, right? But that's really the majority of our properties that we're acquiring now.
Yeah, that's great. You raise a really good point about how that the land markets are actually maturing a little bit. They're becoming a little bit more efficient. And I know that when a lot of people got into land, particularly prior to COVID, there were a lot of people who could send out 400 mailers and get three contracts. And because the market was just less efficient, right? We make our money in the inefficiencies in these markets. So that's a really great point that you raise. Talk to us about what the evolution of your business looked like. So you did that very first land deal. You got proof of concept that, hey, this stuff works. Did you hold on to your rental portfolio? Did you continue with Airbnbs? What did the trajectory of your business look like?
So I sold the Airbnb at the end of last year, for a massive loss. It was pretty bad. And I sold, and I still have a lot of rental properties. They're just humming away in the background. There's a lot of depreciation benefits from them, and they're like more of a savings account. And my business now is we have about 20 employees, pretty high volume of deals. We're doing a lot of different marketing channels in a lot of different states, and just living in that price range that I disclosed to you. And that's how the business looks currently.
That's great. So how did you get from your very first land deal
Oh, yeah.
to now I have 20 employees, we're doing high volume? What did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, I think that it was like very short, very quickly after I did that first land deal, which would have been like, so that was January of 22, what sort of January, February. And then by that summer, I had about 4 employees, all global talent, and like lead managers, data scrubbers, at general admin, buying back my time so I could focus on closing. And the evolution is higher volume mailers at that point. I was doing a lot of texting at that point, and I did a lot of texting all throughout 20. Actually, that would have been 23, not 22, 23 last year. And so I was doing a lot of texting last year. And then in the fall, in October, the 10 DLC changed a lot of that. And we've been doing mailing and that, and we've been doing cold calling, which I think a lot of land investors are doing a lot of cold calling now. And that's our business currently. But in terms of steps, it was just, very systematic in how we're pulling out profits in our business, right? And so it's every deal that comes in, it's 50% to OpEx, 30% to taxes, 20% to profit. And that's just how we scale the business. A lot of skinny months, man. A lot of skinny months as the lumpiness of the land business. But we were fortunate to get a couple of big deals and carry us through.
Excellent. So let's jump over to market selection. How many states are you in right now? Are you currently across the US, or do you have these very specific areas that you like to farm? Talk to us about your market selection.
Probably in 8 or 9 states. Because we do a lot of cold calling, you just burn through data very quickly.
Yeah.
And the difference between the land business and the house wholesaling business is when it comes to wholesaling, you have a city and there might be 500,000 houses, right? And of the 500,000 houses, there might be, I don't know, 250,000 that could potentially sell, or 200. We could burn through that pretty quickly because I have a pretty decent amount of cold callers. But with land, you might have a county that's 500 data points, right? And then you scrub it out and there might be 300 data points, right? And so we have to be in so many counties because we're just burning through data.
Listen up, land fans. This is huge. We're bringing you the one and only Pace Morby, star of A&E's Triple Digit Flip and the mastermind behind $450 million in real estate deals. He's coming to our virtual meetup on Thursday, December 5th to share how he's applying his creative financing genius to land deals. Head to olfmeetup.com to save your spot today. That's olfmeetup.com. This is the kind of opportunity that changes everything. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit more about your marketing funnels? Are you guys doing multiple marketing channels per record, per lead, or are you doing only certain marketing channels in a given county? How do you guys go about managing that?
Yeah, so we're doing 2 to 3 marketing channels per um, lead, and we hit them over a 64-week period. So
Okay.
we pick a county and we hit them for 64 weeks. You can exhaust a county in 64 weeks. Obviously, it's over a year. And we'll hit them with direct mail maybe 7 times, 6 to 7 times. We'll call them 5 different times and go through the list 5 different times, and then sprinkle in a couple other reach out methods as well with consent.
Of
And
course.
yeah, and so that's our marketing strategy.
Yeah, that's great. Can you give us sort of like a 30,000 foot overview of what it might look like? Do you cold call first and then do you follow up with a mail piece and then maybe you send a text? What does that look
Yeah,
like?
yeah. So we pull a list, and what we will do, because we call so many people, is we will not scrub it. Like I used to
Mm,
scrub it, but we call so many data points, Kendall, that it's like it doesn't make sense. We pull it, remove sort of general people that would never sell to us, and then the government, people that have owned it for a year or two. Data points like that will probably reduce our list by 15%. Right after
mm,
that, we will skip trace them, remove the TCPA DNC, and call those people. Right? We'll call those for about 4 weeks, a list, and we're usually about 10,000 records per caller per month. Right? Somewhere around there, 10 to 12,000 records. And then after about 5 weeks, depending, we will either text them or we'll rest a little bit and then call them again on week 12, burn through the list, and then we will then market to high value properties via direct mail. And every county has different levels of high value properties. It could be all the waterfront lots. It could be subdividable parcels. It could be just larger parcels. But we're really marketing to properties that we believe if we get them under contract, we're going to make over $250,000.
mm.
That's for me what's exciting. And so for direct mail, I could send out $30,000 worth of direct mail and make $250,000. I'm really happy. Properties that are really high value. So our scrubber at that point, Kendall, is going to go through and systematically look at every single parcel in that county. Okay, so then we build this list, this extra list of parcels that are what we call trophy or high value properties, right? Whatever you want to call it. And so then we hit those with direct mail, custom direct mail, catered messages, and we'll hit them multiple times with direct mail. Then we'll call them again. Then I have to look through the actual weeks that we're hitting them, but it's every single time it's the same week. And this is all built in an automated system. So we know we upload the data. So it's November 14th. We start every Monday, and we have this columns of counties that we're going to hit over the next 64 months, right? Or 64 weeks. And the system will tell our team members the data, the SDRs, the callers, the cold calling manager, when we're going to be hitting them. It'll send an automated message to them. So I'm not involved in that process at all. And then eventually we will send direct mail to all parcels in the county. So we do high dollar value first. And then as we tire the list more with calling and reaching out, then we'll send direct mail to just the regular parcels. So your 12 acre, 12.57 acre that has limited road frontage, but it could potentially be a flip or a wholesale or whatever. And that's the method, right? And the most important thing is really not the actual when you send it, how you send it. It's the tracking of your KPIs along that process, right? It is knowing that my cost per lead is at this level. My cost per lead as a company is at this level. Now, my cost per lead in Tennessee could be different than Wisconsin. It could be different than Michigan. And so we're pretty granular in what we're looking at for our cost per lead, because you might have, a virtual wholesaler might say, My cost per lead in San Diego is $15,000, right? Or not my cost per lead, my cost per deal, my cost per deal. But my average wholesale fee could be 85,000, let's say. But my cost per deal in Wichita, Kansas is $2,000, but my wholesale fee is $10,000, right? There's a return on ad spend there that needs to be considered. And so when we look at different markets to re-hit in the future, we can turn off the spigot relative to where we're getting the highest return on our ad spend. And so if we look across our portfolio of marketing, we can make very strategic marketing decisions that if we are in the second or third iteration of our direct mail with this in this specific area, does it actually make sense for us to hit this county, right? I'm meeting with my marketing manager to say it might not make sense, right? And if you're looking at that level, you can make very strategic decisions to get more bang for each one of your dollars. Now, you don't have to do that when you're targeting 2,500 mailers per month. But as you get to a level of scale and your overhead is $50,000, $75,000 per month, $85,000 per month, then you have to be very strategic with when you spend your money or how you spend your money.
Yeah, that's really good insight. Now, you mentioned that you guys cast a wide net, prioritize these high value properties. Do you approach those high value property owners differently than you would, say, just an infill lot owner? You mentioned that you guys use like the highly customized, highly targeted direct mail pieces for that. How does that also manifest in your outreach, what you say, how you interact with those types of owners?
100%, right? Like we as the market matures over time, so do the investor. So does the investor need to mature, right? And if we want to get abnormal results, we need to do abnormal actions. And the abnormal actions are deliberate marketing to these owners that are, if I know that I'm targeting a lot of rural subdivisions in that area, right? It's as simple as this, Kendall. I remember getting a call from some guy like earlier this year, and you're one of the 100 letters that I get from Sanford, North Carolina. What's going on there? And this is what we pay attention to, and this is what we need to pay attention to. Everyone's using traveling mailbox, right? And traveling mailbox is in Sanford, North Carolina. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could A/B test the places that our direct mail pieces are coming from, right? But when you A/B test the places that your direct mail piece comes from, if you're sending to rural Tennessee, by the way, it's a red state, if you didn't realize in the last presidential election, and you're coming from New York or California, do you think that mailer is getting thrown in the trash? And so we are as deliberate as when I send out mailers, if I'm using a virtual mailbox, I'm going to be in a middle of the road city that people don't feel one way or another about. I want to give every opportunity for the seller to be compelled to open that mail and connect with me and work with me. Las Vegas. Everyone loves Las Vegas, right? Or a city that's in the middle. Nashville, Tennessee, right? People love Nashville, Tennessee. Charlotte, North Carolina. No real feelings for Charlotte, North Carolina, whatever. Detroit, Michigan. Some places that are out of Denver, Colorado, Los Angeles, San Francisco, I don't know, Austin, Texas, New York, whatever, or Miami. These places have connotations towards them. And so we need to be deliberate in our marketing to eliminate any friction between what the seller could interact with us and cause them to interact with us and having that conversation. And that goes through every part of our process. When the seller comes in, the initial conversations, on our scripts, everything is leading that seller to the end result, which is closing more closable deals. And that's what that is the constraint, close more closable deals.
If you're enjoying this episode of the Only Land Fans podcast, please let us know by subscribing and leaving a review. Now let's get back to the action. Yeah, that's really great insight. I see that sales and marketing background coming to the fore here with your explanation of how detailed. That brings me to my next question in terms of these high value owners, what's their psychology? What does it look like in terms of their most common objections? What have you found in working with those high value owners that this is really what most of them desire? Can you give us a little bit of an avatar profile, if you will, for these high value property owners?
Absolutely. When I came from the house wholesaling world, I was taught a very specific type of approach with sales, which is, and this is very universal, right? It's the emotional sale, right? I remember this story, and I tell this to my sales guys all the time. Understanding the motivation, which is, I was on a phone with this elderly woman, okay? And we were talking about her property. And I asked her, so what's the reason why we're having this conversation? And she's, you know what? I just don't want to deal with the front lawn anymore. I don't want to mow the front yard. And I said, wait, you're telling me you don't hire someone to mow your front yard? You're 86 years old. I didn't say it like that, but basically I insinuated that. She's like, you know what? You're right. It's the stairs. I don't like the stairs that goes in my garage. I'm saying, I said to her, there's got to be a way for you to park your car in such a way that you wouldn't have to worry about the stairs, right? Is that really the reason why we're having this conversation? It doesn't seem like that's a serious thing, ma'am. And she's like, you know what? It's not. My husband was a real estate investor and agent. And I have not found a company that I wanted to work with. I wanted to sell this house to a real estate investor because he was a real estate investor. And I think I just want to sound like you because you sound like my husband.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So there was a motivation there. There was something clearly there. Right. And so the motivation could be I'm behind taxes. I'm in foreclosure. There's some sort of really dire financial situation I'm in. When we're talking to landowners, it is even with our $2,000 properties, which I've never done, but I can imagine it's like I have a $150 a year tax bill. This is not a nuisance. There's not a high intent sale. Right. So take that and magnify that by 10x, right? Your institutional, sophisticated owners, they're investors. And if you're in rural Tennessee, there could be a little bit more of a farmer feel. There could be the generational thing that you want to respect, right? You really want to honor their I've owned this thing for 85 years, 150 years. I want to make sure it goes to the right person. That's what I'm thinking of. But if I'm targeting high value properties that are closer to suburban centers, the conversation is really about them being an investor and focusing on, okay, so you bought this thing for $500,000 in 83. You want to sell this thing for $5 million now, right? If I'm them, I'm thinking 1031. I'm thinking tax problems. I'm thinking capital gains. I'm thinking, can this person close? Because if I'm going to do a 1031, I want to make sure this person can close. I'm thinking, what's the next asset that I'm going to put my money in? Those are the things I'm thinking of if I'm them. And so a more sophisticated investor is going to be speaking more about money. They're going to be speaking more about what's the next move than they're going to be speaking about my great grandma. But we have to understand that every investor is very different. But a certain archetype in a city, the suburban area, I would imagine, and this is how we approach it, right? They're going to be more investor focused, financially focused, trust focused. And then someone in rural America is going to be different. Like you can imagine this. I always think of myself like, who buys the 3-cap hotel in downtown Miami? Is it always a financial thing? Like, why are these people making money, right? If there's like very limited margin, right? They're making money because one side believes that they can find the value in the other side, but they also have the trust factor. You sell to this person versus this person because of the trust factor. There's the name, there's the brand, there's this person knows what they're talking about. They have the track record. And so bringing to the table that as the beginning of the conversation, for me, is really how you approach those conversations.
Yeah, that's really great insight. Now I'm going to jump over to when we were talking about these high value properties, you were mentioning that because they are high value, you actually are seeing slightly lower profit margins, but it might be that that profit is much larger just because of the value of the property. If we're not seeing buy 50 cents on the dollar, sell for 100, what are you seeing in terms of the most commonly acceptable for your business model? Are you buying at 85 cents on the dollar, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's always a risk adjusted return consideration, right? What type of debt am I taking on? Is this purely an equity play? What type of IRR am I responsible for my investors? That's all the consideration that we're looking at. But I would say anywhere between 60 to 80, 77% of value, something like that, is really where we're at for those types of properties. But again, it's debt specific. It's capital stack specific that we're really sensitive of.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, you just mentioned your investors, so I'm assuming that you are raising capital for some of these deals. Is that right?
Absolutely, every single
Awesome.
deal.
So let's talk a little bit about how you go about raising capital for these deals.
Are you saying how do I find investors
Yeah, how do
to?
you find how do you find investors, and how did that first look when you decided to start raising capital for your deals versus what it looks like now?
Yeah, so a couple of things that come to mind is putting myself out there on social media really helped. Twitter, I have a pretty big Twitter following, 7,500 people on Twitter, and they're pretty much all land people because I like Twitter is this undiscovered world of lurkers and people that are like very high net worth that like maybe follow 200 people and are very sophisticated. And I just find that it's just this really high concentration of in the retweet world of very sophisticated investors.
Hmm.
And so I started like posting threads about land on Twitter and just started talking about land on Twitter. And one day some guy reached out to me and we had a conversation and he's been my investor ever since, right? And it was never
Wow.
like very formally soliciting, but what happened is he reached out to me and I gave him a really generous split. I think this is one thing that really trips up a lot of people. It is at the beginning, they want such a big piece of the pie. They're like, oh, I heard Clay on a podcast saying that he's getting 12% or 11% debt financing and 1 or 2 points. And so I have to get that. But I have no track record. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've done 3 land deals and I don't even know what capital stack is. When I started, I said, I just want to get a little bit of a better rate than I would if I was working with a funder. Or I'm getting just a funder level rate, right? And so you got to try on a lot of investors. And if you execute and you go back and say, hey, we've done 5 deals together. My business is more sophisticated. I'd like to renegotiate our investor split. And if you've been a good steward of their capital, you can renegotiate that. And I've gone from 40% to 40% equity to 30% IRR to 20% IRR to 20% interest rate to 18%, no points within 16 months.
Wow.
And the point is always to find the focus on the investor's best interest and focus on the long term. Like even 18% or 20% consistent interest rate, like across the years, like very good, incredibly good. Even 15% is incredibly good. And so I would say that I always had that posture at the beginning, Ken. It was like, I take this person's money so seriously. They're entrusting in me their money.
Yeah.
And my only bad deal that I've ever done was in Williamson County, Tennessee. And I was told I had a friend who referred this broker to me, and my parcel didn't perk. And I was like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'll just get an engineered system and it wouldn't be a problem. But in this specific county, there are some very strict engineering requirements for an engineered system, and my parcel didn't fit those. So it's basically like a slope parcel with a great view with no ability to build. And so I had $180,000 of investors, right? And I had my own money into the deal. And I realized this, and I said, okay, so I'm either going to have to cough up 180K, plus these guys they're both debt investors at this point, and they're pretty aggressive debt. And so their money is compounding, right? So it's not like my situation's getting any better any day, right? It's getting worse every single day.
Time is not on your side.
Right? Time is not working for me, right? It's not a fine wine here. It's debt. It's a time bomb. What I had to do was I had to offer owner financing at a really insanely good interest rate. And this is over a 9.5-month period. And then I sold the debt. I had enough of a down payment, which was 10% of basically the number that I bought it for. So I got some money back, and then I sold the property on the secondary market for a massive haircut. I can't believe I sold it. I didn't think I was going to be able to sell it because the parcel didn't perk. This is land that you could put a barn on. There's nothing else. And there's no sewer line out here. And it's the wealthiest zip code in Tennessee, but who cares? It doesn't matter. And so I had to make my investors whole. But I had to come out of my pocket a lot of money. But that investor called me up and said, I want to start a special purpose fund with you. And he was only an investor that invested $35,000 with me, not that much money, right? He's like, I'm going to put all my bonus. He's a big investment banker. I'm going to put all my bonus towards you. And we're going to create a special purpose entity. We're going to go out and buy. You're going to have full reign on the special purpose entity. You can buy whatever you want because of what you did. And the point here is always give your investors more than what they're looking for, because they will come back to you time and time again. And that's just a general philosophy that I have, even in my own business. My acquisition guy, I pay him more than the competition. My team, I'm very generous in their pay, and I pay them more than even if global talent than what other people are paying, because I think it creates a culture of trust, and that's my philosophy around it.
Yeah, that is so good. What a great lesson. So, can we jump over to Dispo now? Talk to us about what your Dispo activities look like. Are you listing in the MLS? Are you working with realtors? I'm assuming it's in-house, but I don't want to really assume. So, talk to us about that. What does that look like?
A good realtor, man, is man's best friend. But too bad they're not good. They're not enough of them, right?
Yeah.
So the type of properties that we have, I'm not going to list a $720,000 property in-house and not have a local broker that is going to have those people in his pocket, right? But what we do is, this is relatively new, so I'm over my skis a little bit here, but I can talk about the philosophy behind it. I can't say to the audience, hey, I'm the Dispo guy, right? Because I'm just not yet the Dispo guy. But we're building out this department in which we're going to come alongside and basically support the agents, and then if we bring a buyer, we will take the buy side agent fee off the table, right? So we negotiate this stuff with our agents. I also negotiate timed commission drops, right? If you sell it for a certain acreage increment in this period of time, this is your commission. If you sell it in this time, this is your commission. If you sell it in this time, every agent will tell you they can't do that. Every agent can do that, right?
They just don't want to, maybe.
They don't want to, but they can do it, right?
That's fantastic. I love that.
And so we put it in the listing agreement that this is a period of time, because our business is velocity of capital, right? So I'll pay you an exorbitant amount if you sell it in 30 days, but anything after that, it's like a time drop. And then we also have our own disposition efforts that we have a team, and I'm heading this at this point, building the team out of our team listening on the market just broke my wallet with a land.com subscription. And,
I think there
Facebook.
should be a support group for people that have said that same statement.
We should get a referral thing going, man. So I'm gonna stop flipping land. I'm just gonna sell land.com like subscriptions.
I tell you what, that's the business model.
Okay, so long story short, land.com, we just recently got land.com. So we're really beefing this up. And so that's going to be a big effort for us. I find that it's become more of a constraint in our process, particularly over the last 6 months. Our cash conversion cycles have gone up dramatically because of our just time to dispo. And so we're very sensitive to cash conversion cycles, and that's what I'm working on now.
Do you contribute that to the current market conditions as well, that it's just taking a little bit longer to flip inventory or?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, by a significant magnitude.
Yeah, give us some context. What might that look like?
Yeah. So on average, last year we were at like 99 days for a lot of our tracks. And keep in mind, we're very rural, right? And so that's not a terribly long period of time, right? We're very rural. And 99 kind of came at the end. We had a couple of deals, but it was more in the 80 range for the majority of the time. And this year, I'm at 132. It's a month and a half longer. And I just think it's a product of interest rate. I think it's a product of the bonanza is gone. This is the normal market. We just take a trick from a lot of people used to do in the land business, which is purely owner financing. And then we can sell the notes on the secondary market to add liquidity to our listings. And that's what we're doing we're offering a lot of owner financing. And even if we have funders or debt funding, provided we have an attractive enough interest rate when we're offering the mortgage for owner financing, we will be able to sell that before we close. So we can close same day on the sale of the mortgage, essentially basically like a double closing. You can basically, provided your lender's okay with it, which again, this is a lot about the trust factor, but provided your lender's okay with it, you can do that.
Could you give us
transactional funding to fund the gap and then close?
Yeah. So if someone's listening to this and they're like, wow, it's hard for me to even wrap my mind around creating a mortgage and selling that all at the same time at closing, can you give us a quick case study of what that might look like in terms of how that's structured?
Yeah. So imagine you have a property you bought it for $100,000, and just imagine you it's just purely a debt buy, right? So you buy it, you have hard money or private lender. There are some land lenders that are debt lenders, 2.5 points a month, whatever it is, which is basically a debt lender because they're first lien on the property. Think about it like a hard money lender. And you get that property under contract for 200,000, let's just say. By the way, if you have any of those deals, send them to me, my email. I'm just kidding. So you get this property under contract for 200,000 and you got it under contract by 10% down and a certain interest rate, and 10% down is 20,000, but your loan is for 100,000, right? So we have two property A is 100,000, property B, which you're selling, same property, is $20,000 down, which obviously is not going to satisfy your outstanding loan that you purchased the property for. But you have this property, which is $180,000 property, mortgage. I'm sorry. You have this mortgage, it's $180,000 mortgage. You then go to Kendall, who's a note buyer, and you say, hey, Kendall, this is my mortgage. My mortgage is going to pay you X amount over X period of time. 5 years, interest rates, 12%, whatever it is, 14%, 11%, 10%. I know you want to get a yield on your money. I know you want to buy this at a discount so that you can get a return on your money. And usually lenders, depending on the type of loan, depending on the size, the profile of the buyer, they're going to want like a 16 to 20% yield on that loan, right? So if you price it, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but let's say it's a $180,000 loan and you sell it for $140,000. Let's just say, right? So you have the $20,000 that you get from the buyer of that loan. That's the down payment. Then you have the $140,000 that, did I say 140? Yeah, $140,000 that's the note buyer is buying it for. That's $160,000. You bought it for $100,000. So you're basically going to sell the note, the $140,000 note, and the $20,000. That's your profit for the deal, right? Essentially, that's your profit. So the $160,000 will then be at closing of parcel B, your sale, right? Is going to be at closing. Your $100,000 is going to be paid off at closing, which whatever it is. That can almost be on the same HUD, depending. It's it's complicated in there. Usually you have to do transactional funding, but you close it, and so your profit is $60,000, right? Because you have the note that you sell plus minus closing fees or whatever. But if you want to sell your deals faster, you could do that. Now the question is it worth it? Is it worth it to do that? I don't know. It depends on a lot of different factors. How quickly you want to turn your money. If you finance the property, if it's 100% financed with debt, then you basically get an infinite return. Or you don't get an infinite return. You get your return based on your cost per deal. I'm getting a little complicated here.
That's okay. That's good, man.
But you basically get that return. It could be very attractive, right? So if we're looking purely based on a return of our ad spend, which is a return of our capital in our business, which that's how we scale our business, then it could be very attractive because we can decrease the time that it takes for us to actually sell our properties. So that's the way that you can add velocity in your business.
Calling all ambitious land flippers, ready to transform your business with proven systems and processes? Imagine this. One of my students recently closed 2 land deals and got another under contract in just 24 hours. That's the power of a well-oiled land flipping machine. My exclusive coaching program is specifically designed for action takers just like you. We'll build out your entire operation from lead gen to dispo, implementing these systems on real deals from day one. But hurry, I'm only accepting 3 new students until 2025. If you've done deals, have a growth mindset, and are ready to scale, visit kindlecall.com now. Let's turn your land business into a consistent profit powerhouse. That is fantastic. Now, you mentioned that you guys do a lot of rural recreational land. We know that sometimes that can have its own inherent challenges. That can be a completely different animal sometimes, especially when it comes to things like valuing the property. So how does your team go about valuing property in a very rural area that may not have any comps at all? How do you go about evaluating that type of deal?
I need to trademark this. Really? I got to trademark this. But I have an acronym APCP, right?
APCP. Okay.
Right. So it's acreage, proximity, characteristics, price, right? So there are bands of acreages that we look at in our business, right? So we have a 1 acre property is going to sell for a different price than a 1,000 acre property, of course, right? But the bands are like 1/4 acre to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 plus, right? Those are the bands that we're seeing like consistent acreage instruments that are priced per acre, right? And so if you are pricing your mailers, that's the acreage increment that you can live in, right? Usually. Why is that? Because it's easy to pull from Zillow. I don't know. Why is it not 20 to 60? I don't really know. But it's good enough, right? It's good enough for us to give a understanding of that specific type of increment, right? So if we are in a specific area that doesn't have a lot of comps, first of all, you probably shouldn't be in that market if it has 16 comps, right? But if you are in that market and you don't have enough comps to have a good enough view, you just expand the acreage band, right? So if you're a 5 acre or a 6 acre and you're between 5 and 10, you can expand the acreage band one band essentially, Kendall, outside of the initial band, which is, 5 to 10, you go 2 to 5, and then you go 10 to 20, right? Of course, taking into account that your 2 acre could be much more expensive, but you could say, okay, so like my 15 acre is this, my 2 acres this. Okay, I can get an idea about where my property is going to be, right? So that's like the beginning, right? So you have that, okay? But say you have more comps. You have more comps. So it's a bigger area and you have enough comps in your 2 to 5 acre. Let's just say in that you don't have to go expand the band. Well, then proximity is important, right? Because proximity with your parcel is really important. So around that specific area. But proximity is also important relative to the things around it, right? So if you are on the outskirts of a city, I like drew this thing. I'm not really a great artist, but I was drawing something for my team and there's like a city, right? And it's the craziest name. It's Texarkana, Arkansas.
Texarkana. Yeah.
Texarkana.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, who named this? But so you get the Texarkana, right? And you have the little city there in Texarkana, right? You have the little city. And then right outside of it, there's like the suburban band. There's like a band of gray area that is still suburban. And then there's the rural band. And so if you're in the rural band, imagine you have these concentric circles, right? And you're in the bottom south portion of that little band. But you have a parcel that's 2 or 3 miles in that's closer to your parcel than another parcel that's maybe in that rural band, right? But it's a rural property and so is yours. We're going to take that account for that property because it's proximate to us relative to that area, which is the city. Now, this same exact thing happens when we're looking at waterfront properties, right? If you have a waterfront property and you're 1 street back or 2 streets back, your waterfront price could be 50% more, 100%, 1,000%, 2,000% more, right? We all know that. So the proximity to the other comp is more relevant than the actual proximity there because it has that waterfront, right? So the other comp could be up 5 miles away up the street, but that comp could be more relevant for us because it has that sort of those characteristics proximate to the areas surround it. We're not talking about the proximate to the waterfront. Okay. So we have acreage understanding. We have that sort of band that we're talking about 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50. Then we have the proximity, right? We have the proximity relative to the surrounding areas. If our property is proximate to a national park, a water feature, a city, we have to look at parcels that have a similar type of proximity to those areas, right? If that makes sense. All right. Or a mountain or whatever. It's geographical or topographical significant area. And then we have characteristics, right? Characteristics, slope, wetlands, floodplain. Is there a structure on it? Is it farmland? Is it mostly wooded? Is it, I don't know, partially sloped, partially not sloped? What a lot of new land investors mess up, and my team included, which I hope they're listening to this so they remember, is the buildable area matters in a property, right? And so we can't just catch-all give a price per acre of a property, right? If it's a 100-acre property, Kendall, and 55% of it's in wetlands, that part of the property is going to be a different acreage price than the buildable area. Of course, I have a 53-acre parcel that is marketed as the waterfowl hunter's paradise because most of it's wetland.
Yeah.
It's not selling. It's not selling, so it's not a paradise yet. But the front of the parcel, which is like 5 acres, is buildable. The majority of it is not buildable. And so we can't possibly price it like a beautifully flat parcel that is wooded or it's perfectly flat throughout. Just like you might see on your Zillow, if you're looking, or your Redfin or your land.com, you're like, okay, I'm looking through all these comps and I see this comp that's like totally shredded looks like someone took a chainsaw and just shredded all the trees, right? Why is that thing 2,000 per acre and everything else 7,000 per acre? The characteristics of the property. So the maturity of the trees is really important. If you're really mature trees or they've been thinned out, that can affect your property value significantly, right? You cut all these trees down, you have these little shrubs. It's just not attractive. Like a lot of these people are John from Charlotte or Columbia or Nashville or wherever or Houston. He's, honey, come on, let's go out into the truck. We're going to go check out the land. You go out to that land parcel, that's your land parcel, and it's got all the shrubbery out there. That wife is not buying that parcel. No way. My wife wouldn't. And so you got to understand that those characteristics actually matter. All the things like water features, ponds, right? You can't possibly look at a property with a pond, which water features add significant value, but it's all market specific, significant value to the property, right? But that's all the characteristics. So we're at acreage, we're at proximity, we're at characteristics at this point, right? So we understand the characteristics really matter. So the characteristics of the comparable parcels matter, and that dictates our parcel. So if we have these different variations of our parcel, if it's desert, if it's mountaintop, whatever it is, we have to look at the comps and say, okay, my parcel is a little bit of this, a little bit of this, right? So you can start to build this really core thesis. That's how we come up with price, right? So at the end of the day, we come up with a price using these specific things, and then we can put together 2 or 3 comps and say, I have all these proximity, acreage, and characteristics. And at this point, I can feel pretty comfortable saying it's going to be this.
Yeah, that's really good. APCP. What a good gold nugget there. That's fantastic. Now, one thing I know, Clay, that we've talked about that you're very passionate about is scaling. And so I'd love for you to talk to us about what would you consider the top 3 errors that most land business owners make when they're looking to scale their businesses.
First error is not understanding their cash conversion cycle. That's the number 1 error. The second error is not understanding the time to onboard a marketing channel. And the third error is doing what feels good.
Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Let's go down the list. So the first thing is the cash conversion cycles, not understanding that. Pretty self-explanatory, but could you give us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. We were talking a little bit about that earlier. Cash conversion cycles, how long does it take from your marketing dollars to turn into profit dollars? And so what will happen with land investors is they will say, I'm gonna do 10,000 mailers this month. And I'm gonna do 10,000 next month, 10,000 next month, and I'm gonna do 50,000 the next month. And then they do 50,000 and they're like, oh shit. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I can swear, but oh shoot. And I can't invest in marketing this month because none of my deals are actually selling. It's the cycle that how long it takes for your money to turn from marketing dollars to profit dollars. And so why that trips people up is because they think that they need to go. And really it's about consistency, because the tortoise does actually beat the hare here, because if you stay consistent and do less, you don't have to jerk. Because a lot of people, what happens, they'll send the mail out and then they'll have to jerk back, or they'll hide the person and they're like, oh shit, oh, sorry, I'm going to jerk back. And so that's why the cash conversion cycle is really important.
Yeah, so good. Great explanation of that. Number 2 on that list was it underestimating the time to onboard a new marketing channel. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. I would expand this even more to say underestimating the time to actually convert a lead too. But if you put a new marketing channel, cold calling, texting, direct mail, whatever, give it 6 months. Do not make a decision whether or not it's legitimate or not for 6 months. Because on average, depending on your marketing channel, cold calling leads are like 1 in 50 or 1 in 60 leads are actual deal. They're so unqualified. They're mostly tire kickers, and they require like a lot of hand-holding. And so they're very high touch. And also, if you're like 1 in 50, 1 in 60 leads, which is industry average, you could be a better closer than my teams. Granted, that could be true. Or not as good, maybe 80, 1 in 80. But people get frustrated because they're saying, I got 50 leads this month. Why did I not close a deal? Or I got 40 leads this month. Why did I not close the deal? They don't understand that these systems, they mature later. Each marketing channel matures later. We see on average a deal comes in, most of our deals are closing 90 to 120 days later. Cold calling. mean, tough channel. With direct mail, it's a lot sooner, right? Much higher intent. But also, people will do cold calling, and I made this mistake too. They'll cold call and they'll stop in month two. They'll be like, I'm not getting any opportunities. It could be the cold call provider if you hire an agency or don't, but give it like 6 months. So if you're going to invest in an agency or you're going to do it yourself, like you got to give it 6 months. Anything 6 months. And so people will do that. And they'll be like, oh, cold calling didn't work for me or texting didn't work for me. And I did it for 3 weeks or 6 weeks. You're like, multiply that by 10. And then you'll really be able to know. And setting those expectations are really important.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that also that just highlights one of the tendencies that entrepreneurs have is that shiny object syndrome of, oh, someone's crushing it with texting. I've only been cold calling for 3 weeks. I'm going to go do texting. I'll just flip that on, not realizing how difficult it is to actually mature and how much time it takes for a team that you bring on to actually start producing in any new marketing channel. It's not just as simple as flip the switch and now I got contracts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. So the third point was about doing what feels good. So talk to us about that because I think that's something not many people are able to articulate. So I'm really interested to hear this.
It really feels good to listen to Kendall and I talk right now. We have great radio voices. Don't look at us on YouTube though. No, I'm just kidding. The thing that we really need in our business is really most of the time like really boring, like really actually boring. And let me give you an example of what actually matters. Okay. Our lead managers giving feedback to our cold callers that the reason why the leads didn't work out was because of you forgot to do this, you forgot to do this. On a weekly basis, we like do this. We have like departments, like our lead managers telling our cold callers, and I'm like to my cold calling manager, I'm like, we're your clients, man. This is your department. We're your clients, and so we need that. We need to give you feedback so you guys can improve. But most people are like, I'm just going to hire a cold caller, or I'm just going to send out direct mail, and if it doesn't work, it's the guy that I learned this business from, or it's the agency, or no. It's like the boring stuff that is the problems that we like really need to solve. And it oftentimes it feels like slow. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like we're getting very quick feedback loops. And a lot of times you feel like you're questioning if this is the right path. And not like in an existential way. You're like, I feel like I should be doing something else. Not in like, I feel like I should be in a different business. It's more, I feel like there's something else that I should be doing instead of staring at the spreadsheet.
Yeah, that is spot on. And that right there could be an entirely separate podcast. So we may have you back on to talk about that, but so good. I am 100% in agreement with you there. So Clay, let me ask you, what are you most passionate about or what makes you feel like your best self?
Oh, that's a really difficult question to answer. What am I most passionate in the context of business?
In general, like as a person.
I have found great value in building my team and building my investor base and really significantly improving their lives. Now, to expand upon that, I was honestly like at my core, like I'm very selfish and like I didn't start to make significant breakthroughs in my business until I started to figure out the goals and the dreams of the people on my team and focused on that and also with my investors. And so when people come into my team, I ask them, what are your goals? What are your 3 to 5 year goals? And tell me exactly what those are. because my goal is to remove the barriers from where you are right now to where you can hit those goals.
So good. So good. I love that. I love that. Fantastic. Clay, I want to thank you so much. You've given so much to us today, so generous with your knowledge and with your time. How can we give back to you? What resources or connections are you looking for right now?
I would say that I'm looking for large parcels, large opportunities to partner on subdividable parcels and in entitlement tracts. And also, if you want to get a little bit more hands-on help in your land flipping business, like my social media is I'm very active on Twitter and Instagram. And so if you want a little bit more hands-on help, I can help people with that as well.
Fantastic. And where can we find you if we want to do that?
Clay Hepler on Instagram and Twitter.
Excellent. We'll go ahead and put those handles and links in the show description and the show notes as well. So thank you so much. Awesome. Thanks so much. Thank you, Clay. This has been absolutely incredible. What a valuable interview. Thank you to Edra, Chance, all of you who joined Donna earlier. Thank you for live streaming. And this has just been absolutely incredible. So thank you. I'm so thankful for this. We will be back next week with another interview. Until then, be safe, take care, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye. If you're interested in hearing from other seven-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at onlylandfans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.